I'm Brandon Chewning, otherwise known as Spike Nather on YouTube, and I am a cheap mark. For this channel, I am the brand ambassador of WWE, and this is my list of Undertaker's streak matches at WrestleMania. Before we begin, many factors and variables went into making this list. Storyline, excitement, interference, mistakes, and last but not least, is it memorable? Some great detail and effort was given to this list as I brought in some outside help to give me some insight and help me not to be biased. Jay, prior to this, not being a wrestling fan, had the most pure reactions to each and every match, good and bad alike. So without further ado, here's the streak in all its glory. Number 22, Brock Lesnar. The only match where I can't be unbiased. However, I have the evidence to back me up on this one, boys and girls. The most important reason Undertaker falls. In my opinion, and I know many of you have the same opinions, Taker should not have lost the streak. And the second reason, most of you still agree with me on this, Brock Lesnar wasn't the guy to do it. I know. If not Lesnar, who? That brings me to reason 3, and ultimately the final nail in the coffin, on why this deserves to be the bottom. Undertaker was injured, concussed from some move in the middle of the match, meaning Taker wasn't at 100%, and the match suffered because of it. Even if Taker was scheduled to lose, no matter what, he did not deserve to lose in a match to which he doesn't even recollect in any capacity. Thanks to the most recent documentary based on The Undertaker for the WWE Network called The Last Ride, Undertaker reveals that he doesn't remember much, if anything, from that fateful night at WrestleMania 30. Number 21, King Kong Bundy. It was a close tie between this and number 20 on who should be the worst match. King Kong Bundy fits every category on why it should be the worst streak match. The storyline was horrible. Ted DiBiase stealing the urn from Paul Bearer to be the focus of the match, which completely takes the action out of the ring. Excitement? There was zero. No chemistry with Bundy and Taker. Mistakes? Thankfully, the only mistake made was this match being made at WrestleMania. Interference? There was many. Ted DiBiase, Kama, and Paul Bearer all get their hands dirty in this match. Above all else, it's just a very forgettable match. Number 20, Jimmy Superfly Snuka. It all has to start somewhere. Undertaker's first match at WrestleMania. Unfortunately, we have no details on the storyline entering in this match, which does downplay quite a bit the score. The excitement was there as it was The Undertaker's first match, which also checks the memorable box, except for one big thing. Nothing happened during the match. We were given the best Undertaker, the unstoppable phenom, which was unable to be hurt in his early years. So he walked in, took care of business, tombstone piledriver, 1, 2, 3. Overall, not a match I would show to a non-wrestling fan. Number 19, Psycho Sid. The first of 3 championship matches Undertaker had at WrestleMania. Going into this list, I had little to no doubt that the championship match would make the top 10. Wrong. Thanks to rewatching this and making the qualifications more solid, it's easy to pick this match apart. Let's go with storyline. I mean, there wasn't one. Taker was going for the title. Excitement? Easy to say with a title on the line, right? However, we must point out the negatives. Sit back and relax because there's quite a few. Firstly, Psycho Sid had no chemistry with Taker. Please, rewatch the match and you can easily see it. Second, that fed into Sid not being exciting or interesting to see go against The Undertaker. We will come back to this point later in this list, trust me. Third, and most of all, terrible, awful interference. This being WrestleMania 13, the people at the arena and watching at home just saw the amazing, still to this day, submission match between Stone Cold Steve Austin and Bret Hart, where the unthinkable happened within a double turn, where Bret left the ring as the heel. For some reason, to get more heat, decided to whine about it before the championship match got under the way, complaining that the fans didn't have his back, and he deserved to be in the main event more than the two of them. He then returns later to get in between the match again, and fails, being turned away by the Taker, only to return one final time to hit a chair shot on Psycho Sid while the ref was down, much to The Undertaker's dismay, and he was forced to capitalize on this interference. Just an overall awful match, and unfortunately brings this championship match way down on the list. Number 18, Giant Gonzalez. I will be the first to admit, I enjoy this match very much. It's entertaining and lovely to watch The Undertaker finally be the underdog, trying to protect himself and get the win. However, remember the variables, the factors, and if you've recently seen this match, you will know what's coming next. I will lead into this why this is low on the list, but let's get the worst problem with this match out of the way. Undertaker wins by disqualification. At WrestleMania, of course, this is very early in the streak, so it doesn't count as much, but Giant Gonzalez, having issues with keeping Taker down, asks for help from his manager Harvey Whippleman, who has a cloth and some chloroform in the wings waiting. So you tack on interference as well now. For me, this is particularly memorable, but like I said, I must keep this to an unbiased opinion. To which having The Undertaker, even that early in the streak, to keep it with a DQ on the record, I'm sure if there's matches Taker would like to change, this would be one of them. Number 17, Big Boss Man. The first of 3 Taker matches contested within Hell in a Cell at WrestleMania, my personal favorite version of The Undertaker being the leader of the Ministry of Darkness, we see the most, in Jim Ross's own words, satanic Undertaker yet. However, on this list of Hell in a Cell matches, let alone Taker matches, it's pretty forgettable. Nothing big happens in the match besides Undertaker being locked with handcuffs on one side of the wall, with mistake happening when the weight alone of him falling rips the handcuffs off the wall. In my opinion, would be higher, could be higher, if it was just a little more exciting. The only memorable thing coming out of the match was the boss man being hung from within the cell after the Brood helps Taker out to leave some symbolic imagery for the people to go home with. Number 16, Randy Orton. This match had so much potential. Arguably the best version of Randy Orton, the Legend Killer. He was on a rampage at this time, taking out so many legends like Mick Foley, etc. However, the entire match falls so short by having Daddy Cowboy Bob Orton try to interfere and let Randy take down the Fiendom. RK no, in my book. Add this to the list of I wish this match could be redone. Number 15, Mark Henry. I love specialty matches. Most of all, I love Undertaker specialty matches. The story going into WrestleMania 22 is that the world's strongest man was constantly putting roadblocks in the dead man's tracks. Taker took it upon himself to challenge Henry at WrestleMania, under one condition: a casket match. The weeks leading up to WrestleMania 22, Mark Henry was constantly hunted and stalked by The Undertaker due to Henry just not being overly fond of caskets. And if this is not low on the list, where did it go wrong? To sum it up, mistakes. No chemistry, suffer again. But most of all, just like the Big Boss Man at WrestleMania 15, this is not, by any means, the best casket match. Nothing out of the ordinary except a casket was involved. The mistake is most noticeable when Mark hits his strongest slam on The Undertaker and goes for a pin, only to remind himself, hey, you can't win that way. For casket matches, pretty forgettable. Number 14, Jake the Snake Roberts. But first, let's get an honorary mention. This is where I would put Brock Lesnar's streak-killing win, if it wasn't for Taker getting a concussion. Back to the list. Jake the Snake made the big mistake of hitting the wrong person, as Roberts was actually an ally of The Undertaker in the early part of his career. But in a stunt gone wrong, the two tried to set a trap for Macho Man Randy Savage, only for Jake to accidentally tag Taker with a steel chair. Boom. The second streak match at WrestleMania 8, this one, especially compared to the Superfly match, was much more enjoyable. Jake putting in some nice damage against, at this moment, still hard to hurt version of Undertaker, even hitting 2 of his patented DDTs, only to fall to the devastating tombstone and become the second victim. Pretty good back and forth and not difficult to enjoy at all. No mistakes made, no interference. Number 13, Diesel. My number 1 mistake in this match, it would be way higher on this list if it was a championship match. If I could do anything to change on this list, I would have taken the title away from this match with Psycho Sid and put it in this one. Diesel at this time, at the height of his popularity, being a great opponent for the equally tall Undertaker, having a great personality and presence, like Jake the Snake, especially being across the ring with Taker, but there is a second mistake made in this match. Too many holds. Far, far too many. The match took so long, not as many as Sid put on Taker, but enough to make this match feel too long at the end. Thanking the timekeeper and referee for counting 1, 2, 3. Number 12, Edge. The second championship match on this list, Edge deserves to be on this streak. At the end of the day, I would believe it would be a personal Hall of Fame if you had been chosen. whether by the dead man or not, to be the recipient of Victim of the Year at WrestleMania. Edge still holds this match close to his favorites, because he was lucky enough and trusted enough to be in a streak match. A few mistakes plagued this match, however, one being that it doesn't really feel like a normal Edge match. Not too many weapons involved and no ladder included, especially since Undertaker and Edge had been formally introduced to a ladder in which Undertaker chokeslammed him through the ring in a previous match. Would have been perfect for WrestleMania in my opinion. Two, the story leading into this is very convoluted and really peak of just poor writing. Edge being in love with Vicky Guerrero and wronging her, leading to Vicky having to use The Undertaker as a personal mercenary to hurt Edge, only to get closer to WrestleMania, time making up and having Edge defend her love. Just a poor story for a championship match, let alone a streak match. Finally, number 3, in keeping this away from the top 10, interference by the Edgeheads, Zack Ryder and Kurt Hawkins. Number 11, Big Show and A-Train. Envisioning this list before watching all 22 matches, I thought I knew this would be super low on the list. Instead, rewatching this match specifically, The Undertaker was in his prime at this point, the last appearance of American Badass at WrestleMania. The story entering was both Big Show and A-Train wanting to take down the Phenom, but being forced to find a partner, to make it a legal tag match filled by Nathan Jones, a very underutilized athletic wrestler who has since walked the path of now many WWE superstars to get into Hollywood. Only to be taken count on the night of WrestleMania 19 by the two opponents, forcing Undertaker to have to defend the streak, which at this point was being counted in a handicap match. This on paper is a terrible idea. Having the streak defended in a handicap match? Get out of here. Except, it was a great match. Undertaker showing his classic speed that he would show at the height of Deadman Taker to keep both opponents at bay. The end of the match could be, or could not be, the reason this match just misses the top 10, with the numbers almost taking the Phenom down, only for Nathan Jones to come in and take out the Big Show at the end for a successful streak defense. Number 10, Triple H, WrestleMania 27. Personally, I've never been a fan of this match. I don't particularly want to talk too much about it because of the ending. Undertaker being injured in the match and being forced to have to be stretchered and driven out of the arena because he couldn't leave on his own power. The actual match is very entertaining. Triple H showing his cerebral assassin normal self, trying to basically put the Undertaker down any way he can. Some WrestleMania moments were made in this match, allowing it to make it number 10, but the shadow of the ending casts too far to let it go any higher. Number 9, Ric Flair. I, as so does The Undertaker, hold great respect for Ric Flair. Love him or hate him, he has done so much for the business of wrestling. Many ask who would be on the Mount Rushmore of wrestling. Rick should be the first addition, in my opinion. My personal favorite American Badass match on this list, it is entirely as it should be. Rick showing what he has, and The Undertaker being very brutal. Once again, however, the number must be lower and miss the top 5 entirely due to, you guessed it, interference. Arn Anderson runs into the ring to help Rick as he fears for his best friend's life, being busted open by the Badass and just getting demolished at any chance The Undertaker can. The 10th win from a very deserving Ric Flair, who was handpicked by The Undertaker to have this great WrestleMania moment with. Number 8, Kane, WrestleMania 20. How can you not talk about the forgotten childhood brother of Kane? The second meeting of brother versus brother, ending up just to be as personal, albeit a different way, from his previous match. I remember this match so clearly as I was only 12 at the time of watching this in my parents' living room live on pay-per-view. Leading up to WrestleMania 20, a Buried Alive match happened at Survivor Series 2003 between American Badass Undertaker and Mr. McMahon, only for Kane to show up and help finish Taker off. The weeks after, Kane held it proud that he buried his brother because he became normal. One of you, says Kane, to which he felt for his own sanity, putting the person he fought beside 6 feet under for his betrayal. This fantastic storyline stretched for months within the beginning. Small signs of Undertaker still lives, to a full-blown ring movement signifying that he will rise again at WrestleMania. Of course, having Paul Bearer's return after a long period of time was wonderful to see, but the match itself was just great storytelling. Unfortunately, it just wasn't the great match. Kane was powerless against the returning Deadman Undertaker and went down easily after just one tombstone. Number 7, CM Punk. Much like the Kane match, this is an interesting story behind it. Unlike King Kong Bundy at WrestleMania 11, Paul Heyman was in control of the infamous urn after Paul Bearer, real name William Moody, passed away just a little while earlier. In not the most tasteful way, however, perfect for the heelish team of Paul and CM Punk, using this to play to their own mind games against The Undertaker. Using the urn as power for CM Punk, and most of the time just trying to put Taker mentally down, was a good use of this urn in this case. The match is pretty solid, CM Punk showing why he is the self-proclaimed best in the world, hard to argue with him on that one. Very few mistakes made by either man in this match, if any. The only mistake that I can think of is the commentary table not breaking while CM Punk does his fantastic top rope elbow on the Taker. But keeping this match safely away from the top 5 is the blatant interference by Paul Heyman. Not once, but twice, distracting The Undertaker and also giving an urn to CM Punk to get out of the last ride, while the ref was down just a minute prior. A solid performance at WrestleMania 29. Number 26, Triple H, WrestleMania 28. I personally had this much higher on my preliminary list in my head, but trying to be unbiased, Shawn Michaels doesn't end up being very down the middle in a few moments during an otherwise great match. Being held inside the Hell in a Cell, it was being billed as end of an era, as two long-time WWE superstars fight for the final time. Undertaker seeking revenge upon Triple H after the year prior not being able to leave the ring on his own 2 feet, raises the stakes high for this one. With Shawn Michaels as a special referee, the internal struggle and our own personal feelings coming through the television screens as two warriors battle till one can't stand any longer. Though it was justified, Shawn Michaels did end up hitting Sweet Chin Music on The Undertaker in retaliation for a confused Phenom putting HBK in Hell's Gate. Still, at the end of the day, this is an epic battle with a great story and tons of emotion. Very deserving of just being one off from the top 5. This is while filling a unique high bar on this list. The first of this list to check an unmentioned variable and factor, that being if you felt The Undertaker could actually lose this match. To be quite fair, the only other match previously mentioned where you could feel this, since starting to comment about the streak, was felt most on the CM Punk match, with such near falls making you feel like he could lose. Number 5, Triple H, WrestleMania 17. I'll admit, this doesn't have much story going into this show. It's basically a grudge match between The Undertaker in his American Badass persona and Triple H, who had just been settling into his game persona of brutality. It shows well in this confrontation. The story is not woven from the outside, but actually within the match, especially the very epic WrestleMania moment of Triple H being chokeslammed off of a camera scaffolding surrounded by the crowd. This one haunted me. I feel like the epic final encounter between them at WrestleMania 28 is overall better, but the interference and the feeling of dread is missing from this match at X7. It's just a straightforward, end of Attitude Era exciting match. My fantastic helper on this list actually puts this on her number 1 spot, due to it just being flat out exciting. It's hard to argue when someone who hasn't seen this stuff before is absolutely floored by this match. Number 4, Kane, WrestleMania 14. Here we are. This one stands far above many of the ones before this. The first match between brother versus brother. If you are even a little bit of a Taker fan, you know this story. And you know why this deserves to be here. Quick summary. Kane is Undertaker's childhood brother, long forgotten due to a house fire that killed their parents. From Paul Bearer's point of view, being started by The Undertaker himself. Believed to be killed in the fire, Kane survives thanks to Paul. And hidden from The Undertaker until this point, Paul no longer enjoys being with Taker. He then starts planting seeds in his head about the story of his parents, then finally dropping the bomb that his brother isn't even dead at all. Having debuted at Bad Blood 1997, ripping the door off of the very first Hell in a Cell match between The Undertaker and Shawn Michaels, remember that name and follow along now, for weeks, Undertaker denied Kane the satisfaction of fighting back, going as far as promising he would never fight his own flesh and blood. Well, if he kept his promise, we wouldn't have this conversation. This is an all-out war, Undertaker being, besides the very cheesy match with Giant Gonzalez, actually dominated by his brother, both taking multiple finishers and near falls to a third and final tombstone, putting Kane away long enough for the ref to make the 3 count, only to get up moments later to help Paul Bearer attack his brother some more. Number 3, Shawn Michaels, WrestleMania 25. If you've seen this match, you already know why it deserves to be this high. It is easily makes the best match of the night, and is, if not, the best match of the year. The no-give-up attitude in both men, Taker and HBK. This match never feels too long, and emotionally a real roller coaster. Each pin feeling more dread by the second. If you haven't enjoyed this match, do yourself a big favor and check this out as soon as possible. You want to know the only reason it doesn't get the second spot? Because it ended on a cliffhanger. As Shawn Michaels makes a mistake and gets caught after one too many top rope tries and gets put down with one tombstone, leaving you wondering, did he really lose? Or could he really beat Taker and the streak if he hadn't made that one mistake? We would learn soon enough whether this was true or not. Number 2, Batista. This, in my personal opinion, is the perfect Undertaker streak match. Every signature used, every finisher made, and at the end of the day, Undertaker walks away with the championship title. This is the reason this. You want to know the reason this is number 2? You believed, if not before, but during the match, that maybe, just maybe, Batista had Taker's number that night. A formula made even better years later in that Shawn Michaels match. Taker and Batista trade punches, moves, and just stalemates every second of this match. Smooth counters, multiple finishers moved, but ultimately, what solidifies this as number 2 is after that 3 count hits and the bell rings signaling the end, you knew Undertaker was the better man that night. Batista earned his right to be the world champion defending against the streak. Easily this is the best of the 3 championship matches. With no interferences, no mistakes, and no doubt, the streak was defended correctly. Number 1, Shawn Michaels, WrestleMania 26. This is not only the best streak match of all time, but a strong competitor for best match at WrestleMania of all time. The story is simple. Leading into this rematch of Match of the Year from WrestleMania prior, Shawn believes he can do it. He can be the one to put Taker's streak to rest, but becomes obsessive over it, losing his mind over making that one mistake, only to be made worse by challenging The Undertaker to a rematch and being denied by the dead man, leaving Shawn no choice but to sabotage any advances the Phenom makes for the rest of the year. Finally, Undertaker can't ignore Shawn anymore, and after being eliminated at the Elimination Chamber with an appearance by HBK, whom wasn't even one of the members of the match, pushing Taker into a hallway where he had to accept this match. But due to Shawn's obsession and death wish to have this match, he allows Undertaker to make a stipulation, one that he couldn't refuse. If Undertaker defeats Shawn one more time, the Heartbreak Kid must put his wrestling boots away for good. In and out of this world match, it was career versus streak. In what can only be described as everything from the match the year prior turned to 11, you felt the stress of Shawn's career possibly being over with every attack by The Undertaker, only to be equally stressed as a nothing-to-lose HBK goes after the streak, with the strength of knowing he almost made it without that damn mistake. Well, in the words of Vin Diesel in the original Fast and Furious, it doesn't matter if you win by an inch or a mile, winning is winning. After a young Brian O'Connor tells him he almost had him. Almost with the same energy, Undertaker puts Shawn Michaels down, and his career with it, with a phenomenal jumping tombstone. That was my list, and I hope you enjoyed this Cheap Marks episode. Like and subscribe if you could, and don't forget to check out my personal gaming channel in the links below. I'm Brandon Chewning, and that's For Whom the Bell Tolls.